Ahoy, Captain. FuelEU. It's probably one of the most confusing and complex regulations we've ever seen in maritime sustainability. We don't know why the EU wants to make your life so hard, but our goal is to make your life easier, and that's why we made the FuelEU Case Maker, so that you can determine penalties for different fuels to make a FuelEU strategy in order to pay the least amount of penalty as possible. So in this short video we're going to explore different pathways of fuels, penalties and more. Let's dive in. And here she is, the FuelEU Maritime Case Maker. So I'll first show you from top to bottom what everything is, and then we're gonna play around with it, and we're gonna first do a single ship. So here we have the overview of fuel costs, EU ETS cost and FuelEU penalty. And if we change around the reporting year, then you can see that the further we get, the higher the FuelEU penalties will be. We can change the EU ETS price here. We're going to leave it at, well, in this case 80, a little bit lower, so 60. And we can also set the number of cases. We have pre-populated it with some data, but we're first going to do one particular case, one single ship, to show you the ropes. Main fuel, different fuels that we can choose from. Amount of fuel, the blended fuel, so the fuel, the secondary fuel, or the fuel that we blended with, the blend ratio, or just the ratio between the different fuels, amount of fuel here, the resulting balance according to FuelEU, penalties, EU ETS price, resulting fuel costs, and the total cost for this specific case. And then here below we have the total pool balance, and that of course is only applicable if you have multiple vessels. And if you want to sell any surplus, you can also add a certain amount of value to your surplus so that you can estimate your pool value. But bear in mind, this is quite hypothetical. And if we scroll down, we can change fuel parameters here. So we can change the names of the fuels, the prices of the fuels. And if you have any different well-to-tank, well-to-wake values, especially for biofuels, you can change them accordingly here. Fossil fuels are fixed, but still you can play around with them. And also you can see the yearly costs and penalty tables for different cases as well. So you can compare how it's all going to look over the years. So here we have our single ship. Yeah, it's quite obvious, I guess, especially if you have HFO and MGO as main fuels. We're going to have a penalty. Well, in the first couple of years, EU ETS will be a lot more than FuelEU, but you can see that if we extend it towards, let's see, 2030, you can also see, by the way, that EU ETS as per next year, or 2027, 26, will increase, because in 2025 we still account for 70% of EU ETS, but then in 2030 FuelEU penalties will increase. 2035, that's when you really start to pay stuff, and then 2040, then you can see with the current fuel price of, what do we have here, 550 for HFO and 750 for MGO, then it will become significant, let's see, more than fuel costs. But for example, if fuel costs are less, no wait, more, 800 HFO, not sure. Well, here you can see we can play around with fuel costs and prices in order to get an estimate of our single ship case. But one ship, well, that's quite bland. So let's continue to 5 ships and compare how it works with all kinds of different ships and fuels. Here we go, 5 ships, bland. What do I mean? We're gonna first set all the amounts of fuel to 0. So we're gonna only compare a single fuel in this case. Let's see, 0, 0, 0, yeah. So that HFO, MGO, LNG, MDO. No, we're gonna go for a different kind of, no, let's go for HVO. So full biofuel, there we go. And then we can see all kinds of different fuels and how they would result in the total amount of cost. First going back to the first year, yeah, so this is also a nice historical overview, or historical, big fan of history. So we'll see that at some point, of course, different fuels will become more expensive than current biofuels. Of course, I cannot look into a crystal ball with regards to the pricing, but you can see which prices we have here. if you fill in your own predictions, you'll see at some point prices will increase, but also here we foresee that for HFO, even under these circumstances with these types of E values, well, to tank, we're still gonna pay a certain amount of money, but I know for a fact that 45.8 for HVO, that's quite high, so let's make this 12, and then we'll see, yeah, we're still golden. Okay, so this is all kinds of different scenarios for different years, and you can see, okay, until 2035-ish, then probably fossil fuels are still a little bit less expensive, and then afterwards, well, that's when we really need to dive into biofuels. I hope not, but have a look into biofuels. So that's it for the different 5 vessels and non-blending. Now let's see if we can get a positive pool value here. For instance, if we have not methanol, but we have, let's say, biomethanol, what happens then? Still no pool balance is still negative. So we need a different kind of LNG perhaps. LNG, diesel, no. Also here we're gonna incur some penalties. Okay. Well, what if we also use HVO? Yeah, then we get a huge positive balance, and then we can maybe sell this balance towards third parties. Well, here you can see how the tool works. Let's move on to blending fuels and then see how we can make blends in order to reduce the amount of costs as best as possible, and then compare maybe some ships with one another. And so here we have 4 different ships with different blends. We have let's say, well, 4 different ships, 2 ships, and for each 2 cases. So HFO for ship 1 as a main fuel, MGO for ship 2 as a main fuel, and then we blend it with MGO or use it additionally. And then for the second one we only have MGO, but we compare it to what if we have HVO added to it, and you can see it increases in pricing. But what's interesting to see is at which blend do we pay the least amount of money in total. So for example, we have 15,000 tons for ship 2. What if we just say in 2025 14,000 MGO and only 1,000 tons of HVO? There you see, that's already starting to become more attractive. And then if we move to 2030, even way more attractive. So you can see that only a small amount of blending for a diesel with a biofuel that's suitable according to Renewable Energy Directive, we're gonna pay the least amount of money in total. So let's see until when we can actually, so 2036, 5, 4, yeah, there we go. So until 2035-ish, 35. So in that case we have to increase our blend, 13,000, and then let's see, we need 2,000. Okay, even more, so 3,000 and then 12,000 in order to get a there we go, in order to get a positive balance. So here you can see that the amount of biofuels required in this case is of course increasing roughly according to the FuelEU regulations, the amount of decarbonization required. And we can also have a look at the total costs at the end of the road in order to get an estimate of the sort of life cycle assessment, assuming the ships will sail until 2050. Well, it does. Well, so the first and the last case are actually quite close to one another. So doing nothing at all and doing something is close. Interesting. Yeah, so that is it for the different kinds of blending. So let's have a look at the at biofuels, for example. So here we have 5 different types of biofuels, and again, I have to remind you that have a look at these E values and the total well to tank and well to wake values. Those are of course very important for calculating FuelEU penalties as well as price. But have a look at what we have now in the base case, which HVO just set to only 12 in terms of grams CO2 per megajoules, CO2 equivalent. And then let's see what happens over the years until 2050 in the end. Okay, so some fuels in the end with these typical values might be impacted in terms of FuelEU. So then you can also determine that if you have a batch of biofuels below this E value, then probably you don't have to worry about FuelEU at the moment. Please be wary that EU ETS in this model for biofuels we assume 0 as an emission factor, but that can change slightly depending on your biofuel. So there is something we can do about that, customizing and adjusting this model, because ultimately we want to give you the tools, and one of the ways is simply provide you the Excel sheet that's behind this tool. So if you like the tool but you want to work in it on your own, offline, have some more control or maybe some customization issues, you can download the Excel itself that shows all the calculations. You can input different values. You can see you can work up to 10 cases in the Excel sheet, so even more. And you can also add reward factors for wind and shore power megajoules as a total addition. All the calculations are done here. You can see the intermediate steps as well, so there's much more customization options and checking options. You get additionally all the penalty tables with all the calculations, but who needs these calculations, but you can use them to check. Also interesting is this fuel table, so you have everything for your own analysis, all the fuel calculations. And here, for example, if you have different EU ETS emission factors for whatever type of fuel you have, or you want to change things, you can do it here. So you can download this Excel at the website, but also note that members can download all of the Excels, all the tools freely. That's right, if you are a member, you can not only use these web tools in advance before they come out, you can ask us to build these kinds of tools, and you can download all the different Excels freely for a fixed price per month. So have a look at the website or contact us and reach out for any questions and clarifications. And finally, not just have a great day, but have fun strategizing on FuelEU.